We got another book here we're going to get into. This book is called Anglo-Israel, or the Saxon race, proved to be the lost tribes of Israel, and 9 lectures by the Reverend W. H. Poole, LLD. All right, we're going to probably belly flop to the second lecture, right? As I was skimming through this book, I noticed this part right here where it says Tarshish. Very interesting. He actually quotes a lot of Bible passages and other histories when dealing with the Phoenician traders, as we see here. The Isle of Tarshish, or Tarshish is an island or isle. There was a lot of trade going on with Tarshish, and they were going to get precious metals there in biblical history and also in ancient uh, history and other writings. For example, he says in Ezekiel 38:13, it is said that in the latter days Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish with all the young lions thereof were to be associated in commerce and in war. It says here, in view of the overthrow of Tyre, Isaiah wrote in 23:1, how, O ye ships of Tarshish, he says, it was revealed to them from the land of Chittim. The message came to Javan and Dan, which is England and Ireland. All right, Javan, sons of Japhet. Yeah, originally all that area was given to Japhet's kids. Across the straits of Dover from France, as we call it, in the next verses, be still ye inhabitants of the Isle, to whom the merchants of Sidon that pass over the sea have replenished. All right, so it's a lot of commerce going on with Tarshish. He says here, the escaped of Israel and the preserved of Israel were sent over to Tarshish, and the Lord promises them 4 things: the comely and the beautiful, the excellent and the glorious. It says here, it is said in Psalms, what's that? Not sure if that's 72:10. The kings of Tarshish and of the isles shall bring presents. The people on the isles of the west were always a noble, generous folk. All right, isles, so British isles. It says here, of Tyre it is said, Javan was thy merchant in all riches, with silver, iron, tin, and lead. They traded in thy fairs, and Dan, Ireland, and here associated with Javan of England. In the same chapter it is said, the ships of Tarshish did sing of thee in thy market, and thou wast replenished. All right, so basically what he's trying to point out is it's matching the history of the British Isles, the trade they had going on with ancient peoples, metal, same thing. It all matches the biblical stuff what Tarshish was. Jeremiah 10:9 tells us that silver spread into plates was brought from Tarshish. All historians know that the western isles supplied the east with all manner of elaborately wrought metals of gold and silver and brass, bright iron and tin, right? So that's even historic. It matches historical accounts of this area. Turn to Homer, Book 18, and read a free translation describing the smelting operations going on in the foundries on the Tarshish Isles or Isles of Tarshish. All right, even Homer wrote about it. So it says Baal worship and Judaism had formed an alliance on the Western Isles at this time under the name Druidism. All right, so so-called Hebrews had something to do with Druidism. All right, we're gonna get more into all this. And this was the prevailing religion in those countries. To Tarshish, Jonah was bound. All right, so he's saying that's where he went. All right, so we go to a part that says here, God with Israel. And he quotes a lot this person, Sharon Turner, which wrote a very historic scholarly book. There's this one right here. It says here, The History of the Anglo-Saxons, comprising the history of England from the earliest period to the Norman Conquest by Sharon Turner. All right, this is volume 1. This is from 1820. This is almost 1700s. He says, Sharon Turner states that although the Saxon name became on the continent the appellation of a confederacy of nations, yet at first it denoted a single state, and it appears they were so much isolated that the Romans did not come into contact with them, though continually devastating by fire and sword, the people intervening between them and the Saxons. Continuing, he says, as to the Angles and Utes, their names were simply territorial appellations. Angles and Angulos, example, the angle, the shape of the land they had been occupying in Utes from their land jutting out into the sea. That the Saxons, Utes, and Angles were kindred nations and of the same people, I think all admit. It is clear from the identity of their language. and on ethnological grounds they were branches of the same stock, with some dialectic differences of pronunciation, but no real diversity of language. An ancient historian says the Utes were Hebrews of the tribe of Dan, all right? Just like we actually learned in my Danite videos. Make sure to catch those videos again. And that the Utes, Angles, and Saxons were kindred nations. So if all these people are, from the tribe of Israel, sons of Jacob, then yeah, they would be kindred nations. So again, he's quoting a source right here. You guys can go look for it. What makes this statement the more valuable is the fact that the tribe of Dan had two portions in Israel, one on the seacoast, the other inland near Lebanon. We must therefore naturally expect that the one portion of the tribe of Dan should appear with this division of their brethren, the other having escaped and arrived in Ireland some centuries before and were known as the Tuatha de Danann. All right, we went over this again in my Danite videos. This is real history right here. The Saxons are represented in Brewer's Historical Atlas as telling their own story. Thus they came, they said, of the three stouter people of Germany. Example, the Saxons, Angles, and Jutes. That's where they came from. Gretan, in his History of the Netherlands, this word means lower land, states how the Saxons were all driven from Germany. Clotaire II exterminated any who remained behind, that he caused every one of them to be beheaded who exceeded the height of his sword, and thus he drove them out of Europe. I wonder if he was a Roman. Continuing, we're on page 131, it says the new name. We will now look around us for our Saxon ancestors and see if we can find any links connecting our fathers with those wanderers in the country and cities of the Medes. Where did this large body of enterprising men go to? Where did our Saxon ancestors come from? The grave of the wanderers became the cradle of the Saxons. Dr. Abadi Amsterdam in 1723 said, unless the 10 tribes have flown into the air or have plunged into the center of the earth, they must be sought for in the north and west and in the British Isles. First, as to the name Saxon, the dictionaries say it comes from saxi, a short sword. But short swords or long knives were in use thousands of years before we hear any such word as Saxon. As the new name by which the Lord's people are to be known when he calls them to their own land, Isaiah tells us that it shall be a new name which the mouth of the Lord shall name. We are to find the new name in the word of the Lord, not that we are to look for the new revelation from God. It is to be found in the one he has given. In former times, this people were called Hebrews, then children of Abraham, then sons of Jacob, and children of Israel. All right? It's a lineage. It's not a religion. But as we come down the stream of time, we find they are called sons of Isaac. Isaac. In the closing books of the Old Testament, we find the new name. This also had been clearly revealed by God to Abraham when he made the promise, for he said in Genesis 21:12, and Isaac shall thy seed be called. This passage has been repeated on and on through the ages until Paul tells us, and Isaac shall thy seed be called. Also, and Isaac shall thy seed be called in that passage. How in Isaac? Drop the letter I, which is very common in the East, and we have sack. All right, pay attention to this part, guys. All right, drop the letter I from Isaac. Remember, Isaac, if you guys don't know, is a son of Abraham. He is the father of Jacob and Esau. So when you're saying you're a line of Sack, right, of Isaac, you're from the line of Isaac. So again, if you drop the I, we have Sack. The letter C is often found turned to K and often to X. So we have Sax, which with their termination ons gives us Saxons, Isaac's sons, okay? Isaac's sons, the sons of Isaac, which is Jacob, right? Meaning Israelites, the sons of Isaac. But don't get that confused, because that also can include Esau. But that's a big drop right there. It's not us making this up. Says Dr. W. Holt Jade says the word Saxon comes from son of Isaac. Son of Isaac, by dropping the prefix I and adding the affix ons, he gives us Saxon, Saxon, and Saxon. He shows that in most of the Eastern languages, sons of is written Sunia. Okay, so again, remember Jacob is a son of Isaac. Jacob is Israel. As with us in Scotland, Mac means son of, thus MacDonald, son of Donald, and Fitz in England, thus Fitzwilliam, son of William, and O in Ireland as O'Connell, Ebu in Arabian, Bar in Hebrew, Ben in Persian, Ap in Welsh, Ez in Spanish, Von in Germany, Von in Dutch. So in the East, Saxonia means sons of Sac or sons of Isaac. Saxon, right? Saxon. It is a little curious to glean from the history of those ancient nations and from the stone monuments of those early times the various forms in which this word is to be found. I will here insert a few from a list of my own, gleaned from ancient history, found on tombs, tablets, monuments, and inscriptions in various languages. Now he goes and quotes, "Now therefore hear thou the word of the Lord." This is from Amos 7. "Thou sayest, prophesy not against Israel, and drop not thy word against the house of Isaac." The house of Isaac. House of Isaac, sons of Sac, and he got all these different, look at this, Sakai, the Ben Sakai. So the Sakai, Saka, that's Isaac. Sakai, Sunai, Saxi, Sak, Saki, Sacha, Saka, Sakus, Saxo, Saxonia, Saxons, Saxon, Saxony. All right? Sons of Isaac. You guys get it? They gloried in being Isaac's sons. A simple change of accent makes the Isaac sons and dropping the initial vowel, which forms no part of the root of the word and represents a jot, the smallest letter of the Hebrew alphabet, it becomes Saxons, which combined into one word is Saxon, or X is equivalent to CS. Thus, we have a simple and natural origin in Isaac. All right? That's what Saxon comes from. Isaac. It is a fulfillment of the promise to Abraham. In Isaac shall thy seed be called, because through Isaac Jacob came, and through Jacob the 12 tribes of Israel. That's why. That's the fulfillment right there. When God gave to Abraham the promise of the many nations, he named their father the child of promise. Sarah, thy wife, shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. When the strife arose between Sarah and Hagar, God commanded him to hearken to his wife and name the nations of promise, as he had formerly named the child of promise. In Isaac shall thy seed be called. The promised seed, embracing the many nations, are called in Isaac, okay? Not Ishmael. That's what they're telling you right here. Not Ishmael and Isaac. They are named from him as well as descended from him. Hence the company of nations, a confederation. Promised to Jacob are called the Saxon nations. This name appears in various forms in history, but with the same radical significance. Max Muller shows that Sunu is the Sanskrit and Suna, the Saxon for son. Hence the word in its early form in Sakasuna. All right, Sakasuna, that's Isaac's son. By the Greeks, they were called Sakia. By the Romans, Sakae, and afterwards Saxons. All right, they was just referring to the sons of Isaac. All these are patronymics, meaning sons of Sakor, Saka, two forms of Isaac. John Milton, in his History of Britain, thus speaks of the Saxons. They were a people thought by good writers to be descended of the Sakae, a kind of Scythian in the north of Asia, thence called Sakasons, or sons of Sakae, who with a flood of other northern nations came into Europe toward the declining of the Roman Empire, as soon as they conquered the Romans, right? Against the sons of Isaac, sons of Sakae. This great Saxon, who was an Israelite indeed, in whom was no guile, perceived at once a radical significance in the name Saxons, and through his extensive researches that they were the descendants of the ancient Sakai and were of Scythian origin. According to Ezra 8:17, Israel, at the time of the Jewish return from Babylon, had proceeded northward to Casiphia, the snowy mountainous Caucasian region. Here they sojourned a while and gave their name to one of the most fertile tracts of Armenia, bearing the name of their father Isaac and their ethnical name of Sakae or Sakasuna. They called the country where they sojourned after themselves Sakasina. Strabo, the elaborate Grecian geographer who flourished shortly before Christ, mentions it repeatedly and extols the beauty of its climate. He also says the Sakae occupied Bactriana and got possession of the most fertile tract in Armenia, which was called, after their own name, Sakasini. Alright, so you guys remember my Sumerian video? They got driven out actually from this whole area right here by the Sumerians. Yeah, Japheth's people, the Sumerians coming out of Goma, Gomeri, Sumeri. Yeah, they got driven out and they eventually ended up, in the other lands where they became the Saxons. They advanced even as far as the Cappadocians, those particularly situated near the Ixun, who are now called Pontisi. Again, he says the river Araxes flows to the extremities of Albania and empties itself into the Caspian Sea. Next is Sakasini, which borders upon Albania and the river Cyrus. Sharon Turner, again quoting the other historian from 1820 in the other book, at the beginning of the present century published in 3 volumes a valuable history of the Anglo-Saxons, which has passed through 5 editions. In tracing their origin, he finds them in this very region, and in these very people, the Sakae, referring to the testimony of Herodotus, he says, the first scenes of their civil existence and of their progressive power were in Asia, to the east of the Araxes. Here they multiplied and extended their territorial limits for some centuries unknown to Europe. All right? History of the Anglo-Saxons, Volume 1, we got that. He also says to this judicious and probable account of Herodotus, we add the information collected by Diodorus. He says that the Scythians, formerly inconsiderable and few, possessed a narrow region on the Araxes, but by degree they became more powerful in numbers and in courage. They extended their boundary on all sides till at last they raised their nation to great empire and glory. So he goes on about the Sakai and the Saxon line, going back to the Israelites and where they were referenced to by many different writers. Again, Pliny says the Sakai were among the most distinguished people of Scythia, who settled in Armenia and were called Sakasani. Remember, that means sons of Isaac. Albinus said the Saxons were descended from the ancient Sakai of Asia, and that in process of time they came to be called Saxons, all right, the sons of Isaac. Duke says the Cimbrians, all right, these are the Sumerians too, were driven from their country, so I guess the Scythians had gotten back by a people called the Asakai, who came from between the Euxine and the Black Seas, and from whom came those Angli, all right, the Anglos, who with the Saxons, Anglo-Saxons, their family, afterwards took possession of England. And that's your whole Anglo-Saxon invasion. It's not so-called pale-skinned people only, like how we were brought up to think. We're in the book The Ruling Races of Prehistoric Times in India, Southwestern Asia, and Southern Europe by J.F. Hewitt, late commissioner at Chota, Nagpuri. This is from 1894. Because we're talking about the Scythians or Sakas, or the sons of Sakas or Isaac, sons of Isaac. And something very interesting here when they're referencing a certain people, the Saramati, they're saying are descendants, as it says here. Herodotus describes as living in Tarik Chornisos, and who are, he tells us, the descendants of the Amazons or matriarchal tribes, the Amazonian women, and the Scythians or Sakas, all right, Scythians, sons of Isaac, and the Amazonian women, the worshippers of the rain or wet Sak, God. It was these people who, as they went southward, made the Sarasvati, the river of Herat, descendant from the mother mountain of the east, their mother river, and spread themselves over India as the great Naga race, descended from Ida or Ida, their sheep mother, in their northern home of Phrygia and Mysia. All right? So the Scythians mixing with the Amazonians, you get the Nagas. Who's the Nagas? Remember our videos on the Mayas and the Nagas and how they became the Nagas. So it's all connecting who's the Scythians against, or the Sakas, the sons of Isaac. All right. So remember, I'm skimming through this book. I want to get to some other parts. There's a lot of stuff to read here. And if you want to go over it, make sure to find the book. I'm going to share this on my Patreon page so people can have it there. We go to a part here where it says Ireland. All right. And a little further ahead, he says the first inhabitants of Ireland, as the records show, were children of Japhet. One Hartolan sailed through the straits called the Ends of the Earth, south of Spain, and reached a well-wooded island. He was a double parasite, and his posterity was cut off by a dreadful pestilence. Not one of the family was left. The second immigration was the Formorians, relations to the Numidians. All right, we're talking about Hamites, possibly very giant or very tall, who were driven north by the terrors of war. They were called Sea Kings. They came from North Africa. That's what is assumed, because they know they are of dark complexion, so they try to Africanize them. But I believe they are part of the Phoenicians, the people coming out of Canaan, Hamites coming out of Canaan, the true Canaan. The next wave of people that visited Jardishland or Ireland was a people called Baal Goy. They were worshippers of Baal, the sun god. They were of the old Hebrew stock and had fled from the wars in the east. Their leader's name was Nemed. They came through Europe from the Black Sea, through the great wilderness, as it was called, to the Baltic, and thence to the land of sunsetting. They cleared 12 plains of wood, built 2 royal forts, established Baal worship, and exterminated the Fomorians. These people were called Vid or Filbolg, or by others Vidi Pelgic, which means Belgic men. Dr. Moore derives the name from Balgoy. The round towers in Ireland and other monuments prove most plainly that one time Baal was worshipped here. Another wave of strangers from the east came to Ireland. Those persons came from the Mosaic or Moesia, sometimes called Moesia, near Trass. All right, so he goes over a lot of the people coming into Ireland. Some of these we've gone over. It says an expedition from Hispaniola, now Spain, under 8 sons of Milesius, right? The Milesians, landed in the southwest of Ireland. 5 of the sons were lost in a terrible storm. Heber, father of the Aberites, fell in battle on Grishel, Kings County. Hedemon, his brother, fixed his residence at Theomore, now Tara. A race of 20 kings of the same family came and went until the crown descended to Olaf Fola of the family of Ir. He commenced his reign about 900 BC. He organized a grand triennial meeting of the chiefs, which he named Fez. This meeting was composed of chiefs, priests, and bards, Fez, and it met at his castle in Tara. He caused a record to be made of the national events in a volume which was named the Psalter of Tara. Copies of these poetic records are still in existence. He reigned for 40 years with great honor and died a natural death, a very unusual circumstance in those times. His son reigned 17 years and died in the same manner. During the next 260 years, 31 kings wore the honors of royalty, and all but 3 of them fell in battle. Then he talks about the Donans. All right, we got this in my Danite video. The next company of newcomers was the Tuatha de Danann, or tribe of Dan. They were spoken of as accomplished soothsayers, necromancers, etc. Could quell storms, cure diseases, work in metals, foretell events, forge magical weapons, and prove themselves mighty in war. The first company of the Donan settled near Londonderry, and after a time they went to England, then called Javon. All right, England was called Javon. They also visited Scotland. Hearing of African pirates, they meant the Formorians, right? Not necessarily African. They came again to Ireland and sent the pirates out of the country, and out of time, and then held the country, as Buchanan admits, for 197 years. Talking about the Tuatha De Danann, the tribe of Dan. About or during this time also came another company of the Tuatha De Dananns, bringing with them a prophet of the Lord from Jerusalem. All right, we're talking about Jeremiah and Simon Baruch, and a good company of the royal household. With a royal outfit of these, we shall give minute information speedily. All right, it's called the Anglo-Israel, or the Saxon race, proved to be the lost tribes of Israel, in 9 lectures by the Reverend W.H. Poole. So we got a lot of this book in part 1. And we go to the ninth lecture of this book, and it says here the American ensign and official seal, or the eagle, the stars, and the pyramid, one of the ancient banners of the lost Israel, now found in the possession of the United States. In the Hebrew language, the eagle was called Nasir, in Arabic Nasser, in the Chaldean Nesher, in the Greek Aetos, and in the Latin Aquila. In zoology, the eagle forms a family of several genera of birds of prey. They are mostly distinguished for their size, courage, powers of flight, and methods of attack. In all countries and throughout all ages, the eagle is known as a magnificent bird, and indeed, it rightfully stands king among the feathered tribes, as the lion stands now king among the beasts of prey. Johnson says the eagle challenges the first place, not that it is the best dish at table, for no one will eat it, but because it is the king of birds. Pindar, a Grecian poet and naturalist, speaks of the great eagle as the chief magistrate of the birds. An eagle in ancient mythology was alone thought worthy to bear the thunder of Jupiter. The plume of our noble bird is still chosen by the ambitious John Indian warrior as the brightest and best ornament he can wear, and indeed his lady love, Miss Squaw, would not think him worthy of her smiles and caresses if he had, for any cause, lost his eagle's feathers. Why, even the garb of the Highland chief is considered imperfect and incomplete without an eagle plumb, the Highlanders. So he goes on to quote a lot of actual scriptures referencing the eagle and how it relates to America. Then he goes on to says here the lion. There are many more allusions to our imperial bird in the Holy Scriptures, but they are so intertwined with the lion, that king of beasts, that we must here introduce our readers to the coat of arms belonging to our great mother, Great Britain. It is most fitting that the king of birds and the king of beasts should be associated as the heraldic emblems of the two great Saxon nations. The eagle and the lion are very prominently associated in the symbolism of the inspired prophets, very closely and intimately associated in the early history of our Israelitish Saxon ancestors, all right? Israelitish Saxon sons of Isaac ancestors, very strongly and inseparably united in the glorious achievements that mark the onward march of civil and religious liberty, and they too are to be still more closely united in the final conquest of this world for Christ. Thus, the hijack. It is most interesting then to trace their origin as national ensigns. When the venerable Jacob was learning upon his staff, his eyes dim, and his hands trembling with years, he called his sons unto him. Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days. Here, under the influence of a large amount of inspiration, he gives the origin of heraldry. All right, and this is what we already read when Jacob was blessing each of his sons. He's going to tell them what's going to happen, and they'll get the animal or their totem or symbol and the heraldry. Right, that's what we just read and went over each one. We have no difficulty in tracing the lion and the unicorn and the eagle as heraldic memorials of that interesting occasion. Here, the British royal coat of arms was given to Judah, and from that day onward, the lion has been called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Look at that national standard on the first quarter. There are three lions. On the second quarter is the Scottish lion. On the third quarter, you see the harp of David from Mount Zion, and with it its angel guardian. That harp was 2,300 years the sole standard for Ireland. On the fourth quarter, there are other three lions. So that crest or heraldry that Ireland had for all those years, all right, 2,000 years, guys, that was the harp of David. Here are six young lions representing the colonies of Great Britain spoken of in Ezekiel. The merchants of Tarshish, again, Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof. Then comes the lion and the unicorn on each side of the shield, and above all the crowned lions standing upon a crown, guarding the whole. Here are 9 lions, only 9, and a unicorn rampant. How remarkable! The chain you see attached to the collar of the unicorn binds it firmly to the shield with its emblems, indicating the marvelous chain of events in the wonderful history of the house of Israel. Upon that royal standard you will always find a rose, pointing us always and ever to the rose of Sharon, the shamrock, with its 3 leaves and one, reminding us of the Holy Trinity, 3 persons in one God, and the Scotch twistle, which from the peculiar resemblance to a cup, is emblematic of the cup of salvation. All right, so a lot of this might be influenced by Christian stuff. So that's the hijack we see it. But again, when it talks to the heraldry of the Israelite tribes, you can see it here in the royal heraldries of these countries in Europe. The scroll and model, Dieu et mon droit, God in my right, is the model of Benjamin. Here you have a most remarkable collection of the sacred emblems, all united in one standard, indicated the union of the whole people in loyalty and in love to the crown and dignity they represent. I need not pen a word on the zoology of the lion. The frequency with which the figures of the animal were introduced into works of art through all the ages show that it was familiar to the people. The artists have represented the animal with such remarkable vigor and fidelity as to show how often they must have contemplated the silent monarch in his native freedom. I may, however, say a word or two on the history of the unicorn. It is a strange anomaly, a bizarre, un-English, and yet not a mere heraldic invention. Jacob said, when under inspiration, Naphtali is a hind let loose. Our unicorn combines the figure of a horse and the hind or antelope. The original of the unicorn is probably the Hippolyphus of Aristotle, which is the Equicervus or the horse stag of Cuvier, the creature being usually sculpted in profile of the bas reliefs and two erect horns, of course, appears as one. It is the union of the horse and the antelope, so common in the country of the early Saxon and used by them as an ensign. The original of both lion and unicorn comes from the inspired word. Judah is a lion's whelp, the crouch as a lion, and as an old lion who shall rouse him up. Israel has the strength of a unicorn. He lay down as a lion, and as an old lion. He has the strength of a unicorn. His horns are like the horns of a unicorn. His glory is like the firstlings of his bullocks, and his horns are like the horns of unicorns. With them he shall push the people together to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the 10,000s of Manasseh. All right, so we got that again, like, 3 times already, but you guys get it now. This is all different books telling you where they're getting this from. Now you guys understand what the unicorn means when you see it, and these emblems called the Anglo-Israel or the Saxon race proved to be the lost tribes of Israel in 9 lectures by the Reverend W.H. Poole. All right, so I want to Betty flop to this part of this chapter. It says here, Teffy in America. Remember who Teffy is, right? Zedekiah's daughter. When the royal family was transplanted to Tara, remember they had fled after Nebuchadnezzar killed her dad. Jeremiah had helped her reach Ireland, where she married Eocoid Heremon, descendant of Melesius or William the Conqueror, who was of the Sarah line, and Danite. So it says here, when the royal family was transplanted to Tara, right, in Ireland, they brought with them the harp of David, which soon became the coat of arms for the new nationality. And the harp and its angel guardian at once was stamped upon the coins, medals, and national standards, where it remains in honor and dignity until the union of England and Ireland and Scotland, when the harp was placed among the lions on the British coat of arms. Queen Teffy, the Eastern princess so celebrated in Irish history, was symbolized by a woman riding on the back of a lion, as may be seen today on the old Irish coins. All right, that was Queen Teffy. On the great dome of the castles in Tara, she was represented by a female statue standing upright, holding a scepter in her right hand and a pair of balances in her left hand. Oh, you hear that? That's actually Queen Teffy. What does that sound like? Does that almost like the Statue of Liberty and Lady Justice? This statue of the beautiful queen as an emblem of justice has been retained in England to this day. It is Queen Teffy that we've been seeing this whole time. And it may be seen in many of the British colonies. Again, in the Americas, right? Also on the large dome in Washington, you see the same form of a female figure statue with the face of an eagle. And on the dome of the courthouse at Brooklyn, we have Teffy holding the scales, all right? In Brooklyn, we got Queen Teffy, daughter of Zedekiah. In some places, she is seen with her hand upon the harp. Those symbols are all most natural and most becoming, both for Ephraim and Manasseh. It will be remembered that when the inspired Jacob gave to his sons a prophetic intimation of the great unknown future and pointed out the heraldic symbols, that he gave special information about the 2 sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh. They were to be in the latter days 2 great nations. We have this prophecy clearly fulfilled in Great Britain and America. by universal consent as a matter of right, which no one would presume to call in question. That nation on the Isles has long been known as Great Britain. No one can deny that fact. It is admitted in all foreign courts and by all nations and peoples. This is a well merited distinction given to Ephraim, while it is at the same time a fulfillment of the prophetic word. We never hear of Great Italy or Great France or Great Russia or Great Spain. The man who would so far forget himself as to use such terms would be in danger of censure for insulting those nations. To Britain, the term is natural and proper because it is her own, her inalienable right. The term great, also by the same divine right, to Manasseh or America, and with a commendable admiration we hear our visitors and travelers from all the countries on the globe speaking of this great country in America. With what delight do they speak and write of our great forests, our great lakes, rivers, and mountains, our great prairies, and the immense resources of our great valleys, as fertile as they are great. This country is as yet only in her youth. Our cities, though great in their commercial importance, are all young. Our colleges are all in their youth. Our soil is yet in its virginity, and yet we can clearly see good reason why foreigners as well as homeborn truthfully say this is a great country. All right, they're talking about America, and it's not young at all. Dodge the hijack. This is a true old world, and it's very, very fertile. Yes, many resources. Yeah, true paradise. Indeed, Manasseh is the only people who speak of themselves as a great people. Jacob said of that boy, Manasseh, he also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. And so it has come to pass in these latter days, in that solemn hour of divine illumination, Jacob said that one of those peoples was to be a fruitful vine by a well, whose branches run over the wall. All right, now we're going to go to the part where we're talking about the national seal again. The author says in the Detroit Library, I saw a cut of the first and original seal, which was then made. It has a special interest for Anglo-Israel readers. The Geset Pyramid in Egypt covers nearly 14 acres of land, is oriented with astonishing exactness. It has 9 rooms and a grand gallery full of mathematics and scriptural measures. It speaks with command and eloquence from lips sealed for 40 centuries to the listening ear of the most advanced science and theology, as it shows a vast mass of solid masonry vitalized and pervaded with the highest order of truth. In olden times, it was esteemed one of the 7 wonders of the world. The other 6 have passed away, while this one is every year becoming more clearly understood, and is esteemed to be the most wonderful by those who understand it best. This pyramid by some means found a place on the reverse side of this great seal. Above the zenith is an eye and a triangle surrounded with a glory proper. Over the eye is a Latin motto, Annuit Coeptis, which means he prospers our beginning. On the base of the pyramid, the numeral letters MDCCLXXVI, the date of the commencement of the new era. Underneath this another motto, Novus Ordo Seclorum, which means a new era in the ages. In view of the above facts, we may well ask, what had the American Congress of 1782 to do with Egypt or its almost forgotten wonders? And how came they to give it such a place of importance and direct it to the eye of the vast millions that find a home on this continent? All right, because in reality, ancient Tamari, ancient Egypt was here. That's why. Isaiah had spoken clearly of this pillar or pyramid, and of its place and its work in the latter days, and it is in the divine plan and purpose as revealed that the Saxon race on this side the ocean shall have a part in the honor and reward of promoting his glory and healing and saving the nations. Isaiah 19. All right, and that's the verse that he's referencing. The sign and witness unto Hawa from Egypt has been heard, and its prominent place upon our American seal may have had something to do in the intense interest shown by so many of our American scientists in their careful examinations of that structure. It is somewhat singular that the Congress of 1782 should have adopted so remarkable a sign, one that would witness to Hawa and tell of their origin. To my mind, there was great propriety and beauty in the selection. This new nation was about to fulfill the role of Manasseh, whose tribal ensign was a fertile vine by a well, whose branches ran over the wall. The land of Egypt, the land of the pyramid, was the birthplace of Manasseh. He was born and educated in Egypt. His mother was a princess of that land, and that pyramid was to be a witness to all lands of the identity of the Saxon race and nation upon whose grand seal that wonderful structure was engraven. What more becoming than that such an emblem on the seal of the great people who, in the latter days, will number hundreds of millions, and who are fitly represented by one whose birth in early years was in the land of the pyramid. That device may also be regarded as an emblem of the greatness, strength, and durability of this American nation. The learned ones in England and in France had been writing largely and talking still more largely of this marvelous pyramid, and Sir John Prestwich, Baronet, England, was one of the men who had been much interested in pyramidology. He suggested to Honorable John Adams, then an American minister, the beauty and significance of such a device upon the Great Seal, and John Adams knew well how to make good use of the suggestion, and accordingly the Congress adopted it.
Robert Dre, Bye.